What made the night stand out wasn't the scale of the event or the flash of cameras, it was the quiet way meaning found its way into the spotlight. No announcement had prepared anyone. No schedule hinted at it. Yet when Freen arrived at the charity auction and Becky appeared not long after, the atmosphere subtly shifted. Not with shock, not with noise, but with awareness. People noticed. Conversations softened. Eyes followed not out of curiosity alone, but recognition. This wasn't planned. And that was exactly why it mattered. Charity events are often filled with rehearsed moments, carefully timed appearances, coordinated photo ops, polite smiles meant for headlines. But this felt different from the start. Freen and Becky didn't arrive together, didn't seek each other out immediately, didn't create a scene. They moved independently, each focused on the cause that had brought them there. Yet somehow, the room understood the significance before anything even happened. Staff later described the energy as calm but attentive. There was no scramble, no whispered instructions. Just a gentle awareness that two familiar presences now shared the same space again, not for work, not for promotion, but for something bigger than both of them. When Freen paused to examine an item up for auction, Becky was across the room speaking quietly with organizers. They weren't performing awareness. They were participating, listening, asking questions, engaging with the purpose of the night rather than the attention it might draw. That authenticity didn't go unnoticed. As the evening unfolded, their paths crossed naturally. Not dramatically, not deliberately. A shared glance, a brief exchange of words, a nod that carried familiarity without demanding interpretation. For those watching, it felt like witnessing something deeply respectful, a shared understanding that didn't need to be explained. Fans later said the moment felt grounding. There was no attempt to redefine anything. No effort to reassure or provoke. Just two people showing up, present in the same space, aligned by cause rather than circumstance. In an industry where every shared appearance is often dissected for meaning, this one stood out because it refused to be decoded. It simply existed. The spotlight, ironically, followed them anyway. Cameras lingered longer than expected. Social media lit up not with speculation, but with appreciation. People didn't ask what it meant. They asked how it felt. And the answer, overwhelmingly, was calm. It felt mature. It felt intentional. It felt kind. Freen was later seen quietly placing a bid, her focus unwavering. Becky applauded when the final amount was announced, her reaction genuine and unguarded. These small actions mattered more than any posed photograph ever could. They showed alignment, not with each other necessarily, but with the moment. And that alignment made their shared presence meaningful. What struck many observers was how neither tried to claim the spotlight, yet the spotlight naturally found them. Not because of history, not because of rumor, but because people sense sincerity. When sincerity appears in public spaces, it draws attention without effort. As the night continued, there was no escalation. No dramatic moment that demanded headlines. Just quiet consistency. Two individuals navigating the same room with ease, respect, and emotional intelligence. That's what made it resonate. Fans later described it as reassuring, not because it answered questions, but because it didn't raise new ones. It suggested balance. It suggested peace. It suggested that whatever paths Freen and Becky walk, they are capable of sharing space with grace. And grace is rare. By the time the auction ended, people realized they had witnessed something subtle but lasting. A reminder that not every meaningful moment needs choreography. That connection doesn't always arrive with declarations. And that sometimes the most powerful statement is simply showing up for the same cause, at the same time, without expectation. It wasn't planned, but it was meaningful. And long after the lights dimmed and the guests departed, that quiet shared spotlight lingered, not as a question, but as a feeling. And that feeling stayed long after the venue emptied. In the days that followed, people didn't talk about outfits or bids or photo angles. They talked about tone, about atmosphere, about how the night felt different once both Freen and Becky were there. It was as if their presence grounded the room, reminding everyone that the purpose of the event mattered more than the attention surrounding it. Those who attended later shared that neither of them lingered near the spotlight when it found them. When conversations turned toward the cause, both listened more than they spoke. When praise for attending, both redirected attention back to the organizers and beneficiaries. That kind of quiet redirection doesn't happen by instinct alone. It comes from intention, and intention was everywhere that night. At one point, witnesses noticed Freen and Becky standing only a few steps apart, not interacting, yet clearly aware of each other's presence. There was no tension in that distance. Northwest urgency to close it. Just comfort. The kind that comes from mutual respect and an understanding that not everything needs to be addressed in public. For fans watching clips online, that distance said as much as closeness ever could. Social media reactions reflected that maturity. Instead of frantic speculation, comments leaned toward gratitude. People said they felt relieved seeing them in the same space without discomfort. Others said it reminded them that growth doesn't always look dramatic. It can look like composure, restraint, and kindness. Some even pointed out that this was the first time in a while they had seen fans agree on one thing, that the moment felt healthy. That alone made it significant. Industry observers also took note. Charity events are often used as soft re-entry points into public narratives, but this didn't feel like strategy. There were no coordinated exits. No shared photos released afterward. No follow-up statements to frame what had happened. The night was allowed to end exactly as it began, quietly. That decision protected the meaning of it. What lingered most was the sense that both Freen and Becky were exactly where they needed to be. Not proving anything. Not correcting assumptions. Simply participating in something larger than themselves. And in doing so, they reminded people why their presence carries weight even when nothing is said. Meaning doesn't always come from closeness. Sometimes it comes from coexistence. As weeks passed, the charity auction was still referenced not as a turning point, but as a reassurance. A reminder that shared spaces don't have to be complicated. That history doesn't have to dictate behavior. And that mutual respect can exist quietly, without explanation. For fans, that was enough. The story didn't need a next chapter. It didn't need escalation. It stood complete in its simplicity. Two individuals, one cause, and as time went on, one shared night that felt became the most talked about part of the night. Not planned. People began to realize that what they witnessed at the charity auction wasn't a moment meant to change a narrative. About it. It was a moment that promised something to be part of one, but because it showed in a world where appearances are often treated like statements, Freen and Becky offered something quieter, normalcy. And normalcy, when it's unexpected, can feel powerful. Those who replayed clips from the event noticed how relaxed both seemed. There was no stiffness, no guarded body language, no sense of discomfort. Even when they were photographed in the same frame from opposite ends of the room, the energy didn't feel tense. It felt settled, as if whatever questions once hovered between them had already been answered privately, long before anyone else thought to ask. That realization shifted how people interpreted the evening. Instead of searching for hidden meanings, fans started focusing on the cause itself, the funds raised, the beneficiaries, the impact. And in a subtle way, Freen and Becky had helped redirect attention exactly where it belonged. Their presence drew eyes to the event, but their behavior kept those eyes there. That's a rare balance to strike. Some fans pointed out that if the moment had been planned, it would have felt heavier. There would have been anticipation, pressure, expectations. Instead, the lack of preparation gave it freedom. It allowed the night to unfold without demands, without conclusions needing to be drawn. Freedom often feels like relief. Observers later described the atmosphere as light once both were present, not because they interacted openly, but because nothing felt strained. The room didn't hold its breath waiting for something to happen. It simply continued, comfortably, as if the most important thing had already been achieved. Peace. That's what made the shared spotlight meaningful. Not the proximity, not the timing, not even the history, but the ease. The ease of existing in the same space without needing to define it. In the days that followed, neither Freen nor Becky referenced the event directly. And somehow, that silence felt respectful rather than evasive. It suggested that the night belonged to the cause, not to commentary. That whatever meaning people found in it was theirs to hold, not something to be shaped or corrected. And fans respected that boundary. The charity auction gradually faded from headlines, but it didn't fade from memory. It became one of those moments people mention softly, almost fondly, when talking about growth, about maturity, About how sometimes the most reassuring signs aren't loud reunions or public explanations, but quiet coexistence handled with care. Looking back, it's clear why the moment resonated. It showed that shared history doesn't have to complicate shared space, that kindness doesn't require proximity, and that showing up for a cause, for a moment, for a room full of people can be meaningful even when nothing else is said. It wasn't planned. It didn't need to be, because meaning, when it's real, doesn't need choreography. It simply appears and stays.